But the crew were concerned by another recent tragedy.
We were in the aftermath of Lockerbie, and I had instructed the crew to be particularly aware because it was a through flight from Los Angeles going through to New Zealand. So in my pre-flight briefing, I had asked them to make sure that they checked any baggage that looked suspicious or anything because we wanted to be extra cautious.
Flight 811 was heavily loaded, 337 passengers, crowded cargo holds, and a full fuel load. The doors closed on time, and the plane left the gate just before 2 o'clock in the morning for a routine 8-hour flight.
Well, we were going to New Zealand on vacation, someplace that we had really thought was interesting, and somebody had told us how beautiful it was, so this was kind of a dream come true.
I was seated in what's called the upper deck. I hadn't had a vacation in 5 years. And I took all my Mileage Plus points from United Airlines, and I purchased a business class ticket to Auckland, New Zealand, and Sydney, Australia. And I was going to finally make that dream vacation I'd always wanted, to get to Australia and lay on a beach somewhere and forget about airplanes, forget about accidents, and get this out of my mind for a while.
On the flight deck, Captain Dave Cronin was hugely experienced, just 2 months short of retirement.
I flew almost 35 years with United. I've got over 30.
Out of Heathrow when it failed to pressurize at 20,000 feet. The pilots had to turn back.
When they got back to Heathrow, they found that the door was hanging open 1.5 inches at the bottom, and all of the locks were open. When it got to the maintenance base, they found that all of the locking sectors were either bent or broken.
Why had the sea latches turned and bent back the locking sectors? Boeing claimed that ground crew must have mishandled the mechanism. But the Campbells' investigation uncovered another vital clue to why the sea latches had turned. A report highlighted problems with the door's electrical system.
It had a fault in the S2 master latch lock switch that should have turned off the power to the door when the outer handle was closed.
This was an alarming finding. When the outer handle was closed, the S2 master lock switch was meant to disconnect the power supply and stop the sea latch motors from turning. So could this have failed, allowing the motors to open the door? To find out, Boeing asked the airlines to do a simple test: close the outer handle, then press the switch to open the door and see what happens.
When they hit the switch, it actually worked. Boeing thought, this is not going to work, but it actually worked. There was power to the door locks with the outer handle closed, and the lock started to move, and it started to force the locking sectors out of the way. And a few days later, the airline started ringing in and saying it was damaging their planes. So Boeing stopped the test. But it meant that on those aircraft, the S2 switch had failed, which is a silent failure. And all of those aircraft were likely to have the same problem as...
In the cabin, the crew prepared for the worst.
My training kicked in and got up from my jump seat and started instructing the crew. We have to prepare the cabin. We have to, prepare for a ditching, which I thought was inevitable.
You're running around getting the life vests on, and I do remember thinking, I'm not sure this is going to matter, because when we hit the water, I just imagine the plane's going to split apart.
I knew that if we hit the water, it'd be tantamount to hitting the ground, and there would be very few, if any, survivors. So my mind went to the things that meant something to me, and at that point in my life, it was my son.
Believing they were going to die, one passenger took these photographs in the hope they'd be found in the wreckage and give clues to the cause of the crash. For 15 minutes, the plane steadily lost altitude. Then at 4,000 feet, the first glimmer of hope.
After an imponderable time, I remember one of the passengers began to point out one of the windows on the right side. And everybody looked. And we looked through this little window from wherever we were, and we could see a point of light, and another point of light, and another point. And pretty soon, you could make out a coastline.
Okay, I got lights over here.
Okay.
Okay, we're at 4. We're 21 miles out. We're in good shape.
But the danger was far from over. At Honolulu Airport, an emergency was declared. All other aircraft were diverted, and the rescue services prepared for the crash landing of a fully loaded airliner.